Inside Los Angeles Men's Central Jail, one housing tier suddenly went quiet after a younger inmate ended up helpless inside a cell everyone else avoided. The heavyset prisoner standing over him was known simply as Fat Rat, while nearby inmates kept their distance, already understanding whose cell it was. Only one man finally walked toward the doorway as nervous whispers spread across the tier, although what happened next would later become one of the most repeated stories in California prison folklore. That was Michael Fat Rat Allen after prison had already consumed his life. But before those stories ever reached the jail tiers, another reputation had already been written in blood across the streets of South Central Los Angeles. Long before Fat Rat's name became connected with county jail horror stories, South Central Los Angeles was already producing violence faster than families could escape it. Factories disappeared, stable employment declined, public schools struggled, while crack cocaine transformed neighborhood corners into profitable locations guarded by firearms and retaliation. During the mid-'80s, young men watched older crews earn money, protection, and recognition through organizations that often controlled only several dangerous blocks. Police pressure rarely stopped those operations for long, since witnesses understood that speaking openly could place relatives, children, or entire households under threat. Inside that environment, the family Swan Bloods occupied a small territory where survival depended upon numbers, alliances, and somebody willing to answer every attack. Their 89th Street clique sat inside an especially hostile pocket near 88th Street and Central Avenue, surrounded by several larger Crip neighborhoods. East Coast Crips, Avalon Gardens Crips, and Kitchen Crips pressed around that territory, leaving family Swan members with limited space for movement or retreat. Central Avenue became more than a roadway there, since locals understood it as a dividing line separating rival sections with very different neighborhood loyalties. By 1993, the quarter-square-mile territory connected with the 89 family recorded 12 killings during a single year, showing how concentrated the violence became. Yet the man who came to control that pocket had started life inside a home that looked nothing like the usual gangster stereotype. Cleman Demone Johnson was born in Los Angeles on October 15, 1967, becoming the third of 5 boys raised by Aileen and Cleman Johnson Sr. Their 3-bedroom house on 88th Street included family dinners, backyard pigeons, Kool-Aid on the porch, plus camping trips far beyond South Central. Young Cleman joined Boy Scout Troop 374, where he even earned a survival merit badge before street survival replaced nearly everything taught inside that uniform. Nothing inside his household automatically pointed toward murder, yet the neighborhood outside his front door introduced death while he was still an elementary school child. The first major break came when Cleman watched his friend Daryl get shot while both boys sat on a fire hydrant. That killing happened near 84th Street in town when Johnson was roughly 8 years old, placing armed neighborhood conflict directly inside his childhood memories. Within another year, he reportedly witnessed a second boy die, deepening the lesson that ordinary friendships could end during sudden confrontations over territory. By the time Johnson reached Drew Middle School near Watts, encounters with armed Crips had become a regular feature of his daily movement. Local blood factions, including Peril, Bounty Hunter, Brim, and Swan-affiliated youths, gradually combined their strength against the larger groups surrounding them. From that pressure came the 89 Family Bloods, whose identity offered protection while placing every participating youngster inside a wider cycle of retaliation. Johnson developed a reputation through physical fighting before firearms became the main tool, with relatives describing somebody skilled with fists, elbows, knees, and teeth. His half-brother, Ricky Parker, remembered him as the neighborhood's best street fighter, which helped Cleman gain respect before he controlled organized violence. Once guns replaced hand-to-hand confrontations, his approach reportedly became more calculated than the impulsive shootings detectives usually encountered across South Central. LAPD investigators Rosemary Sanchez, Thomas Matthew, and Christopher Barling eventually studied him as a planner who selected targets, arranged movements, and responded rapidly. That difference turned Cleman into Big Evil, a nickname that followed him from neighborhood corners into homicide files and high-security courtrooms. Inside the 89 family structure, Big Evil created an inner circle known as the 88 Monsters, which operated like a tighter unit within the larger set. Police eventually connected Johnson with more than 20 killings, while Johnson himself admitted involvement in 13 during a detailed 1998 interview. FBI agent John Lipsky later compared his methods with those of Chicago mob hitman Anthony Spilotro, emphasizing the planning and body count investigators associated with him. Detective Barling described one alleged 1991 operation where 2 decoy shootings pulled officers away before 10 armed men entered a housing project. Those shooters reportedly fired more than 200 rounds, killing 1 person while showing how Big Evil treated neighborhood warfare like a coordinated mission. Detective Matthew also believed Johnson ordered an attack against him personally, leading an LAPD SWAT detail to shadow the officer for protection. Rivals faced immediate retaliation, witnesses faced intimidation, while younger members saw that Big Evil rewarded obedience and punished hesitation inside his organization. Even officers who considered him exceptionally dangerous noticed his charisma, including Detective Sanchez, who remembered his oversized laugh and unsettling ability to charm people. That combination allowed him to recruit soldiers without relying only on threats, since some youngsters viewed him as both neighborhood defender and successful commander. Among those men was Michael Allen, whose documented public life barely existed before his name became attached to Johnson's expanding criminal case. Unlike Big Evil, Allen left no detailed childhood profile, family interview, school history, or clear account explaining how he entered the family Swan Bloods. Public records introduce him mainly through the actions prosecutors later claimed he performed for Johnson inside the 89th Street clique. Even his nickname, Fat Rat, created confusion years later when internet storytellers mixed his identity with the Hoover figure mentioned around prison history. The available case record places Michael Allen with the family Swan Bloods, which matters since the Hoovers were established rivals rather than organizational partners. That distinction also changes his role, presenting him as Big Evil's alleged subordinate within a blood set instead of a Hoover working across enemy lines. Allen's usefulness came from his willingness to remain close when Johnson needed somebody prepared to enforce decisions without public debate or visible hesitation. Where Big Evil attracted attention through leadership, interviews, and police surveillance, Allen stayed mostly silent inside the surviving record, appearing repeatedly as a co-defendant. That silence gave him a different kind of presence, since prosecutors described a dependable participant who allegedly accepted assignments other members might avoid. Street retellings later added stories about beatings, intimidation, and discipline, although the strongest verified material begins with a broad daylight killing during August 1991. By then, the organization already possessed its commander, its territory, and its internal unit, while Michael Allen was becoming the reliable muscle beside them. The next move would begin near a car wash at 88th Street and Central Avenue, where 2 men sat inside a white Toyota Supra. Neither Donald Ray Loggins nor Peyton Berrois was identified as a documented gang member, yet their location placed them within sight of Johnson's family home. Prosecutors later claimed Big Evil selected them during an initiation exercise, then asked which person nearby wanted to handle the shooting. Michael Allen allegedly answered that question, accepted the weapon Johnson provided, and stepped into the event that would define his legal existence. After years of neighborhood pressure, calculated retaliation, and rising authority, Big Evil had finally found his perfect lieutenant. By August 1991, Donald Ray Loggins had built a life that moved on a dependable schedule, far removed from South Central's neighborhood warfare. He worked for a local cable company, returned home around 2:45 each afternoon, then watched his 5-month-old son while his wife prepared for work. Violet Loggins relied on that routine, especially while balancing motherhood with a swing shift that required Donald's punctual arrival every weekday. On August 5th, she sat inside their 2-bedroom home holding the baby, watching the clock while 2:45 passed without her husband entering. Donald was only a short distance away, yet gunfire near 88th Street and Central Avenue had already destroyed the afternoon they expected. Donald had stopped near a car wash with his friend Peyton Berrois, where both men sat inside a white Toyota Supra around 2:30 p.m. Neither man was identified as a documented gang member, although their position placed them close to Cleveland Johnson's parents' house on 88th Street. Central Avenue divided rival territory, with Crip neighborhoods pressing from the east while the 89 family Bloods guarded their smaller section nearby. That geography could turn an ordinary stop into something dangerous, especially when Big Evil and members of his inner circle were gathered within viewing distance. Prosecutors later argued that Johnson noticed both men, selected them without warning, then converted their presence into an initiation mission. According to the prosecution's reconstruction, Johnson wanted a newly recruited Blood to prove himself through violence against somebody associated with the wrong side of Central. He reportedly asked the men around him who wanted to shoot Berrois, turning a public killing into a test of loyalty and nerve. Michael "Fat Rat" Allen allegedly answered the question, while Johnson supplied the firearm that placed the assignment directly into Allen's hands. From there, the plan moved quickly, giving Donald Loggins and Peyton Bear-White almost no opportunity to understand what was unfolding nearby. Allen allegedly approached the Toyota before firing repeatedly, striking both occupants 3 times each during the broad daylight attack. The gunshots cracked through the intersection, while residents, car wash customers, and people near Johnson's family home rushed away from the open pavement. Loggins and Bear-White remained inside or near the Toyota with fatal wounds, while the shooter disappeared back toward territory protected through fear. Donald never reached home for his regular childcare shift, leaving Violet to learn that her husband had been killed near the neighborhood car wash. Their son would grow up knowing him through photographs, while Violet carried questions that nobody on the block seemed willing to answer. Peyton Bear-White's family faced the same sudden absence, although prosecutors later described him as the specific target Johnson offered for Allen's initiation. The shooting occurred before what investigators believed were dozens of possible witnesses, yet nobody initially provided the names needed for an arrest. Residents understood that Johnson's reach extended beyond street corners, with rumors claiming he could order punishment through coded messages even after entering custody. That reputation made cooperation dangerous, especially within a quarter-square-mile section where witnesses still had to sleep, raise children, and visit relatives. LAPD homicide detectives encountered silence repeatedly while investigating the 89 family, whose members allegedly answered testimony with intimidation, disappearance, or immediate retaliation. As detectives pursued the car wash case, other people connected with nearby prosecutions began dying before their information could safely reach juries. In 1994, Gloria Lyons told authorities that she had witnessed an 89-year-old family member commit a killing, placing her inside another dangerous prosecution. She was later murdered, while Georgia Denise Jones also testified in that matter before being killed under circumstances prosecutors eventually connected with Johnson. Albert Sutton had already been scheduled to testify during a separate 1992 murder case, yet he was killed before reaching the witness stand. Tyrone Mosley later became another name prosecutors tried adding to Johnson's expanding murder case, although those charges would face major legal challenges. Their stories showed why the car wash witnesses stayed quiet, since cooperation around Big Evil's organization appeared capable of carrying a death sentence. The LAPD finally organized a dedicated 89 family task force during 1994, combining homicide detectives, FBI agents, and prosecutors against Johnson's network. Rosemary Sanchez, Thomas Matthew, and Christopher Barling studied the group's shootings, while FBI agent John Lipsky examined Johnson's planning and command structure. Their central problem remained unchanged since physical evidence could establish gunfire, yet frightened residents still refused to identify the person holding the weapon. Detectives needed somebody from inside the organization who understood the hierarchy, knew who issued orders, and could connect Allen directly with Johnson's decision. That opening eventually came through Freddie F.M. Jelks, a fellow gang member whose own criminal exposure gave investigators leverage. Jelks faced the possibility of spending his life inside prison, which placed him under pressure to cooperate while offering information about the 1991 murders. He told investigators that Cleman Johnson ordered the killings of Donald Loggins and Peyton Bear-White, supporting the theory that the attack was planned. More importantly, his account helped prosecutors position Michael Allen as the man who accepted Johnson's gun before carrying out the daylight shooting. Jelks became the government's central witness, although his gang background gave defense attorneys several reasons to challenge his motives and reliability. Even with those weaknesses, his testimony supplied the missing bridge between Johnson's command, Allen's alleged participation, and 2 bodies left beside a car wash. The account also pulled Allen away from the shadows surrounding Big Evil, where he had previously appeared mainly as another quiet member of the 89 family. Police now viewed him as the alleged trigger man in a calculated double murder, rather than simply a heavyset enforcer standing near Johnson. For Violet Loggins, that development offered a possible answer, although it could never restore the husband who failed to arrive home that afternoon. For prosecutors, Jelks provided enough structure to begin building a capital case that would take 6 more years before reaching judgment. The car wash murders had finally begun pulling Michael "Fat Rat" Allen into public view. Freddie F.M. Jelks gave investigators something they had chased for years, although one cooperating witness alone could never guarantee convictions inside South Central's gang world. Detectives still needed physical evidence, supporting testimony, plus plus enough surrounding facts to convince jurors that the killings reached far beyond one afternoon at the car wash. That responsibility landed on a group of investigators who spent years studying the 89 family bloods, gradually connecting shootings, retaliation, neighborhood politics, and leadership into one organized picture. As their work expanded, Michael Allen stopped looking like an isolated suspect, while Cleman Big Evil Johnson increasingly appeared as the man prosecutors believed directed violence from the top. Detective Rosemary Sanchez became one of the officers who spent years tracking Johnson's organization across South Los Angeles, eventually learning that his personality confused almost everyone meeting him for the first time. She later admitted that Big Evil could laugh easily, joke comfortably, and appear surprisingly friendly despite the homicide files carrying his name. That ability to lower people's guard made him even harder to understand, especially after investigators compared his public behavior with the calculated killings they believed he orchestrated. Sanchez never viewed Johnson as another reckless street shooter, since every new case suggested planning instead of emotional retaliation. Her growing understanding helped prosecutors explain that Johnson's organization functioned through structure rather than random neighborhood violence. Detective Thomas Matthew approached the investigation from another angle after concluding that Johnson allegedly posed such a serious threat that he even ordered violence against law enforcement. According to later accounts surrounding the case, Matthew believed Johnson had arranged a hit targeting him personally, forcing LAPD leadership to place a SWAT detail around the detective for protection. Christopher Barling reached similar conclusions after examining several shootings connected with the 89 family bloods, eventually describing Johnson as someone who prepared operations instead of simply reacting after losing friends. One incident particularly stood out, with investigators claiming Johnson staged diversionary gunfire before moving roughly 10 armed men into a housing project where more than 200 rounds were fired. Those allegations shaped the image prosecutors later carried into court, presenting Big Evil as a strategist whose orders traveled farther than his own footsteps. Federal investigators also entered the picture through FBI agent John Lipsky, whose work eventually stretched across decades of Johnson's criminal history. Lipsky considered Johnson different from many gang leaders operating during the early 1990s, comparing his methods with those of organized crime figures who relied upon planning instead of impulse. That assessment also affected Michael Allen, whose alleged role looked increasingly important once prosecutors argued he carried out assignments chosen by Johnson himself. Rather than presenting Allen as an independent killer moving through South Central alone, investigators described somebody whose actions fit inside a larger command structure already under intense surveillance. Every interview, search warrant, and homicide file, therefore, strengthened two cases simultaneously, one against the alleged commander, another against the alleged triggerman. While detectives built those files, another pattern kept interrupting their progress through witnesses who disappeared before their testimony reached juries. Gloria Lyons agreed to cooperate after witnessing an 89-year-old family member commit another homicide, although she was later murdered before her information could fully strengthen prosecutors' broader campaign. Georgia Denise Jones also became involved with authorities during that investigation, only to lose her life before the justice system completed its work. Albert Sutton had already suffered a similar fate after preparing to testify in another murder case during 1992, creating another painful reminder that cooperation carried enormous personal risk. Each killing deepened fear throughout South Central, leaving investigators with fewer living witnesses every passing year. Those names remained important long after the original car wash investigation, since prosecutors believed they represented a broader pattern surrounding Johnson's organization. Tyrone Mosley later joined that growing list when authorities attempted to link his killing to Big Evil during additional legal proceedings years afterward. Whether discussing Lyons, Jones, Sutton, or Mosley, investigators repeatedly confronted the same obstacle whenever somebody agreed to speak publicly. Neighborhood residents watched those stories unfold, drawing their own conclusions about what happened to witnesses whose identities reached the wrong ears. That atmosphere explains why Donald Logan's killing remained unsolved for years, despite occurring before numerous potential eyewitnesses during daylight hours. Eventually, prosecutors believed they possessed enough evidence to move forward, placing Michael Allen and Cleman Johnson inside one of Los Angeles County's most significant gang murder prosecutions. The trial finally opened in 1997 after years spent collecting testimony, forensic evidence, investigative reports, plus Jelk's account describing Johnson's alleged orders. Prosecutors argued that Johnson selected the victims, supplied the firearm, and then directed Allen toward Donald Loggins and Peyton Barwai during the August 5, 1991 shooting. Their presentation combined physical evidence with witness testimony to portray a disciplined organization operating through leadership, loyalty, and carefully assigned violence. Every day inside the courtroom carried consequences reaching beyond two defendants, since families, detectives, prosecutors, and neighborhood residents all waited for answers. Michael Allen's defense rested largely with attorney Joe Orr, who attempted to shift attention toward the environment shaping young men raised inside South Central. Orr argued that Johnson represented someone molded by neighborhood circumstances rather than simply becoming violent without outside influence, although prosecutors insisted planning outweighed background. Johnson's mother also appeared, expressing heartbreak while admitting she never understood how her son reached that point despite growing up inside a stable household. Throughout much of the proceedings, Allen remained noticeably quiet, allowing prosecutors to highlight his silence while focusing greater attention upon Johnson's leadership role. Even without dramatic courtroom exchanges, both defendants projected confidence that many observers later remembered clearly. Judge Charles Horan eventually rejected the defense arguments after jurors found both men guilty of the murders tied to Donald Loggins and Peyton Barwai. During sentencing, Horan addressed Johnson directly, stating that nobody except Johnson himself bore responsibility for the path ending inside his courtroom. Death sentences followed for both defendants, placing Michael Allen and Cleveland Big Evil Johnson among California's condemned prisoners after years of investigation. Johnson reportedly reacted with surprising calm, later claiming he celebrated the sentence inside the county jail while predicting appeals would keep the case alive for many years. His confidence sounded unbelievable then, although later developments would prove that prediction far more accurate than anyone expected. Sheriff's deputies eventually transported both men to San Quentin State Prison, where California housed inmates sentenced to death while appeals slowly moved through the courts. Families hoped the verdict closed one chapter. Detectives believed years of work had finally paid off, while prosecutors considered the convictions validation for an extraordinarily difficult investigation. Yet the legal battle had only entered another stage, even though almost nobody outside the courtroom understood that reality during 1997. As San Quentin's heavy gates closed behind them, Michael Allen and Cleveland Johnson disappeared behind prison walls, carrying stories that were still far from over. Years after Michael Allen entered California's prison system, the story from the opening began circulating through tiers, county jail pods, barbershops, and online gang channels. The version repeated most often placed a younger inmate restrained inside a cell while a heavyset prisoner called Fat Rat stood over him. Another prisoner allegedly approached and interrupted whatever was happening, although no official incident report, disciplinary finding, or criminal charge confirms that specific encounter. What survived instead was an oral account passed from inmate to inmate until Fat Rat's prison reputation became darker than the double murder attached to his name. That difference matters since the killings of Donald Loggins and Peyton Barwai reached a courtroom, while the jail allegations remained untested stories carried through frightened voices. Prison rumors spread quickly, where formal paperwork rarely captures everything happening between locked doors, especially when victims fear retaliation from stronger inmates. Sexual violence remains heavily underreported inside correctional facilities, where speaking openly can bring humiliation, gang discipline, or another assault before officers intervene. That silence creates a space where stories grow without witnesses appearing publicly, leaving future listeners unable to separate first-hand accounts from exaggeration. Michael Allen already carried a death sentence, a feared nickname, and ties to Cleveland Big Evil Johnson, making almost any violent allegation sound believable. Once enough prisoners repeated those claims, his legal history became only one layer beneath a larger legend built through terror and shame. One major source of confusion involved Sonika Shakur, born Cody Scott, who became known across Los Angeles as Monster Cody. Shakur joined the 8 Trey gangster Crips while still young, survived years of street violence and incarceration, and then later embraced black nationalist politics. His 1993 memoir, Monster, the autobiography of an LA gang member, became one of the most influential first-hand accounts of Los Angeles gang life. A figure called Fat Rat appears within the book's Hoover-related prison world, which later online storytellers connected directly to Michael Allen. Yet Allen's verified affiliation was the 89th Street Clique of the family Swan Bloods, an organization positioned against Hoover sets rather than inside them. That contradiction leaves two possible explanations, neither of which has been settled through available records or confirmed testimony. One possibility involves two different men carrying the same common nickname, especially since Fat Rat described physical appearance more than exclusive gang identity. Another possibility involves later retellings, combining Allen's murder case with an unrelated Hoover prisoner remembered inside Shakur's book. Internet channels favored the cleaner version, where one terrifying figure connected every shooting, jail assault, and whispered tear story under the same name. By the time viewers encountered Michael Allen online, the distinction between Hoover history and family Swan history had mostly disappeared from the popular narrative. The allegations attached to Allen describe somebody who allegedly targeted younger inmates, including men from his own gang, rather than established rivals. According to repeated street accounts, he watched for prisoners showing fear, isolation, physical weakness, or uncertainty about jail politics. Those men supposedly faced beatings, forced labor, sexual humiliation, or threats designed to break resistance before the entire housing unit. Some retellings claimed Allen ordered younger prisoners to wash his clothing, clean his cell, braid his hair, or perform other degrading tasks. None of those individual claims resulted in a publicly located conviction, although their consistency kept the stories alive across several generations. Other accounts described an alleged protection system where vulnerable inmates paid Fat Rat through food, commissary products, personal service, or complete submission. In that arrangement, refusing payment supposedly meant violence, humiliation, or attention from other prisoners who understood Allen's reputation. Prison hierarchies often reward physical control, access to resources, gang backing, and a proven willingness to injure anyone challenging authority. A respected inmate can therefore collect goods without touching anyone, since fear performs most of the work before a confrontation begins. Allen's heavy build, folded arms, quiet demeanor, and existing murder case gave those alleged demands an extra level of pressure. The most disturbing stories involve claims that he sexually assaulted younger family Swan members during incarceration or gang initiation-related situations. Such allegations represented a major violation of the Brotherhood language gangs used publicly, where membership supposedly guaranteed protection from outsiders and support from older homies. Fat Rat's rumored behavior reversed that arrangement by making his own people the easiest targets available inside confined spaces. Younger inmates could not simply change neighborhoods, leave the tier, or openly report somebody whose allies might occupy the same facility. Whether every allegation was accurate, partially exaggerated, or attached to the wrong Fat Rat remains impossible to determine from surviving documentation. The term booty bandit eventually became inseparable from his name, overshadowing the car wash case, Big Evil, and the 14 years spent under a death sentence. Inside prison slang, the label described a physically dominant predator who used coerced sex as a method of control rather than intimacy. That reputation carried both fear and ridicule, creating a strange position where inmates supposedly avoided Allen while mocking him safely from a distance. Street legends usually celebrate gunplay, robberies, retaliation, or drug money, yet Allen's story moved towards something considered more shameful within gang culture. His alleged victims were not opposing shooters encountered on Central Avenue, but confined men sleeping only several feet away. Sonika Shakur's supposed intervention became the most repeated scene, even though researchers could not verify that Michael Allen was the Fat Rat involved. In the popular version, Shakur entered a cell and found a younger prisoner restrained while Fat Rat prepared to assault him. Shakur allegedly stopped the situation, creating one of the few moments where another feared gang figure directly challenged the predator controlling the tier. That account offered audiences a complete scene, recognizable characters, and a dramatic confrontation, which helped it spread faster than the complicated legal record. Yet the certainty added by repeated narration never produced the missing proof connecting Allen to that exact incident. What can be established is that Allen spent years inside highly controlled correctional environments after his 1997 conviction, first under California's death row system and later inside Los Angeles County custody. During those years, his public paper trail remained thin compared with Johnson, who received interviews, detailed profiles, and regular legal coverage. Allen appeared mostly as a co-defendant, leaving prison rumor to fill the empty spaces where personal history should have existed. Every retelling added another humiliation, frightened youngster, protection payment, or alleged assault to a record nobody outside those walls could fully inspect. Over time, those stories became stronger in public memory than the verified facts that originally sent him to San Quentin. That transformation explains why the opening mystery survived even without a date, confirmed victim, identified cell, or completed official investigation. The account captured how inmates believed Allen used fear, physical dominance, and sexual violence to control men who should have considered him a homie. Its uncertainty also made the story harder to kill, since no single document could conclusively prove or disprove everything whispered across multiple facilities. Michael Fat Rat Allen entered prison known publicly as Big Evil's alleged triggerman in a broad daylight double murder. By the time those jailhouse stories spread beyond the walls, Fat Rat had become feared inside prison more than he ever was outside. More than 13 years after Michael Allen and Cleman Big Evil Johnson entered San Quentin, their convictions began collapsing over events inside the 1997 jury room. During deliberations, 2 jurors complained that juror number 11 had already decided the case before everyone finished examining the evidence. Their disagreement centered partly on defense witness Carl Connor, who claimed a co-worker helped cover his time records during the murders. Juror number 11 said he doubted that a Hispanic co-worker would falsify those records, which other jurors interpreted as proof that he had stopped deliberating fairly. Judge Charles Horan removed him and seated an alternate, allowing the remaining panel to continue toward guilty verdicts and death sentences. That courtroom decision looked procedural during 1997, yet it became the issue that destroyed the entire prosecution 14 years later. In December 2011, the California Supreme Court unanimously ruled that Horan lacked sufficient evidence to remove the juror during active deliberations. The justices concluded that disagreement with another juror's reasoning did not automatically prove misconduct or refusal to participate. Removing a sitting juror without a clear justification damaged the structure of the trial itself, making the resulting verdicts legally unreliable. The court therefore overturned both murder convictions completely, taking Johnson and Allen off death row rather than merely changing their sentences. The ruling did not declare either man innocent, although it erased the legal judgments that had branded them murderers since 1997. Michael Allen and Cleman Johnson returned from San Quentin to Los Angeles County's Men's Central Jail while prosecutors prepared another trial. Donald Ray Loggins and Peyton Berrois had been dead for 20 years. Freddie FM Jelks was no longer available, and memories surrounding the car wash had weakened. Prosecutors still believed Johnson ordered the killings and Allen accepted the firearm, but proving that story again required rebuilding an aging case. What once looked like a completed capital prosecution had suddenly become a fragile collection of old testimony, missing witnesses, and disputed evidence. Rather than limiting the retrial to the August 5, 1991 car wash murders, prosecutors tried expanding Johnson's exposure through several additional killings. They filed charges connected with Albert Sutton, Georgia Denise Jones, and Tyrone Mosley, while also adding an attempted murder count. Those names carried the same pattern investigators had followed for years, involving people killed after entering cases tied to the '89 family Bloods. Gloria Lyons had also died after cooperating in another gang investigation, deepening suspicions that witnesses around Johnson's organization were being systematically silenced. Prosecutors believed the wider case showed how Big Evil protected his operation through fear extending beyond the original Toyota Supra shooting. Johnson's attorneys, Robert Sanger and Victor Salern, answered with the claim that the added charges amounted to vindictive prosecution. Their argument held that the state was punishing Johnson for successfully overturning his first conviction by stacking new murder accusations onto the retrial. Sanger warned that such a strategy could discourage every condemned prisoner from appealing, since winning might expose them to even more charges. Prosecutor John Harlan countered that authorities had developed additional evidence and should not be forced to ignore killings merely because the original case failed. The judge ultimately sided with the defense, dismissing the new counts and leaving prosecutors with only the decades-old car wash prosecution. That decision returned everyone to the weakest point inside the original case, namely the absence of Freddie Jelks as a living witness. Jelks had supplied the testimony connecting Johnson's alleged command with Allen's alleged role as the shooter, yet he later died in an unrelated West Side incident. prosecutors could rely upon his previous statements under certain legal rules, although the defense could emphasize that jurors would never watch him answer new questions. Donald Logan's widow, Violet, still carried the loss of a husband who never returned for his afternoon childcare routine, but grief could not replace admissible evidence. Peyton Barrois' killing remained equally central, even as the passing years made every surviving detail harder to present with confidence. While lawyers fought over those problems, Johnson and Allen remained inside Los Angeles County custody for years without final convictions. Johnson spent stretches in segregated high-power housing, where jail officials reportedly believed he could still influence violence beyond his cell. He told visitors that the restrictions were not designed for his protection, claiming authorities feared what he might organize if released into the general population. Johnson also began distancing himself from the Big Evil name, insisting he wanted to be called Kleeman and could help reduce neighborhood violence. Whether that change reflected genuine reflection or a legal strategy remained impossible to measure from his own statements alone. Michael Allen experienced the same legal limbo without receiving anything close to Johnson's public attention. Reporters continued interviewing Big Evil. Attorneys discussed his claimed transformation, and investigators revisited his alleged body count across several decades. Allen appeared mainly in motions, hearing summaries, and court references, identifying him as Johnson's co-defendant. Little public information described his health, daily routine, legal expectations, or personal reaction after spending 14 years under a death sentence. That silence allowed prison folklore to keep defining him while the actual murder prosecution moved slowly through procedural disputes. Then another problem emerged from inside the investigation itself, weakening the state's case more seriously than any fading witness memory. In 2014, LAPD Detective Brian McCartan used a racial slur while discussing black gang members during an informal conversation involving legal professionals. McCartan was the lead investigator on Johnson's case, which made his language especially damaging once the remark became relevant to the defense. The prosecution did not disclose the comment for 4 years, leaving Johnson's attorneys unaware of possible evidence affecting the detective's credibility and bias. When the information finally surfaced during 2018, it opened another legal fight over fairness, disclosure obligations, and whether the prosecution had hidden damaging material. By May 2022, the judge overseeing the retrial concluded that McCartan's remark, combined with the delayed disclosure, created unfair prejudice against Johnson. That ruling damaged the credibility of an already vulnerable prosecution built upon old statements, deceased witnesses, and disputed investigative conduct. FBI agent John Lipsky had spent years describing Johnson as an unusually strategic and dangerous gang leader, yet even he acknowledged the disclosure problem was serious. Lipsky still believed Johnson had directed organized violence, although constitutional violations could not be dismissed simply because investigators considered the defendant dangerous. His reaction exposed the case's central contradiction, where strong suspicions remained while the legal foundation continued breaking underneath them. By that stage, both defendants had outlived their original convictions, their death sentences, multiple witnesses, and several attempts to strengthen the prosecution. Johnson publicly claimed he had changed while remaining locked inside a case connected with more than 20 alleged killings. Allen stayed mostly invisible, trapped between a vacated conviction and a prison reputation no courtroom had ever examined. The state still intended to retry the car wash murders, yet every passing year removed another witness, weakened another memory, or introduced another legal challenge. Neither man had reached the end of the case. Michael Allen never reached the second jury that prosecutors had spent more than a decade preparing to place before him. On February 6, 2022, correctional staff found the 49-year-old unresponsive inside Los Angeles County's Men's Central Jail, where he remained while awaiting retrial. Medical personnel attempted treatment, but Allen was pronounced dead that night before the original car wash case could return to court. The coroner later identified sudden cardiac death complicated by atherosclerotic heart disease, classifying his death as natural rather than violent. Even with that official finding, rumors moved through the jail almost immediately, with prisoners speculating about poisoning or an overdose without producing evidence. Those whispers followed the same pattern that had shaped Allen's entire prison reputation, where tear stories often traveled faster than medical reports or court rulings. His death appeared quiet compared with the violence attached to his name, yet its timing created one final complication inside an already tangled legal history. The California Supreme Court had completely overturned his 1997 conviction in December 2011 after finding the removal of juror number 11 improper. That decision erased both the guilty verdict and death sentence, returning Allen to the legal status of a defendant awaiting trial. Therefore, when he died inside Men's Central Jail, Michael Allen remained legally presumed innocent of killing Donald Ray Loggins and Peyton Berwai. That outcome did not settle what happened near 88th Street and Central Avenue on August 5, 1991, where both men were shot beside the car wash. Prosecutors still believe Cleman Johnson selected the victims, handed Allen a firearm, and used the murders as an initiation assignment. Freddie F.M. Jelks had supported that theory during the original prosecution, although his death left the state without its central living witness. Detective Brian McCartan's racial slur, followed by the 4-year delay before disclosure, weakened the retrial further during proceedings that continued into 2020. Allen's death then removed any possibility that another jury would examine the allegations, challenge the surviving evidence, or issue a final verdict. For Violet Loggins, the legal uncertainty could not change the afternoon her husband failed to return home and relieve her from caring for their infant son. Peyton Berwai's relatives also received no second trial, while prosecutors lost the only remaining route toward restoring Allen's murder conviction. His death closed the case against him procedurally, although it resolved almost nothing about guilt, innocence, or responsibility for the shooting. That unfinished position separated Allen from Cleman Big Evil Johnson, whose own case eventually reached a negotiated ending after 3 decades. Johnson survived long enough to accept a plea deal, giving prosecutors a result they no longer believed a full retrial could reliably deliver. In June 2023, the 55-year-old Johnson pleaded no contest to 1 count of first-degree murder for the killing of Peyton Berwai. Prosecutors dismissed the other murder counts, including the charge involving Donald Loggins and the later cases connected with Albert Sutton, Georgia Denise Jones, and Tyrone Mosley. Judge Curtis Rapp sentenced Johnson to 25 years to life, although his decades already spent in custody made him immediately eligible for parole consideration. Deputy District Attorney Amy Murphy described the agreement as a certain conviction compared with gambling on a weakened case before another jury. With Jelks dead, McCartan's misconduct exposed, and memories fading, prosecutors accepted 1 murder judgment instead of risking complete failure. Eligibility did not guarantee Johnson's release, since California's parole board still needed to assess his history, conduct, and claim transformation. Johnson had spent years rejecting the Big Evil identity, telling visitors that he wanted to help reduce the same neighborhood violence he once allegedly controlled. FBI agent John Lipsky remained convinced that Johnson had operated with unusual strategic discipline, even while acknowledging the constitutional problems damaging the prosecution. Attorney Robert Sanger described his client as changed after decades in custody, creating another unresolved argument over whether time had altered the man investigators once feared. Unlike Allen, however, Johnson left the case with a final conviction resting on his own plea. Michael Fat Rat Allen left behind 2 competing versions that never fully merged into one reliable story. Court records preserve the alleged triggerman accused of accepting Big Evil's weapon before 2 unarmed men were killed in broad daylight. Jailhouse folklore preserved another figure, a feared predator accused of humiliating younger inmates, collecting commissary tribute, and targeting members of his own gang. The murder conviction disappeared through appellate law, while the prison allegations remained outside any courtroom and survived through repeated oral accounts. That combination kept his name circulating long after his death, even though neither version received the complete legal resolution audiences might expect. In the official record, Allen died awaiting retrial, presumed innocent after 14 years under a death sentence that California's highest court later erased. Inside prison mythology, he remained the heavyset man whose name allegedly made younger prisoners avoid particular cells, tiers, and housing assignments. One version depends upon judicial filings, witness testimony, reversed verdicts, and an unfinished murder prosecution. The other survives through warnings, rumors, and stories that nobody could conclusively prove or completely dismiss. Michael Fat Rat Allen died inside Men's Central Jail, but the 2 stories attached to him never reached the same ending.